hello, and good evening from the UK, from London. I'm Dr. Rana Al-Falaki, and I am a number one best-selling author of Women Who Want More: How to Create a Balanced and Fulfilled Life. And I'm also a life and business mastery coach, really specializing in helping people with stress management, communication, leadership, boundaries, and more than anything, how to balance your life. And I work very much with leaders, professional women, business owners, in order to carve out that really desired couple of hours of me time in the day. And I've developed an amazing method that is called the Breathe method, that encompasses so much in its training in combination with coaching to help people to really achieve that work-life balance. But when we talk about work-life balance, and sometimes people talk about work-life harmony perhaps being a better, more appropriate term for it, it's very generic, because balance means different things to different people. And I write about this in my book, and I talk about, imagine yourself standing in the middle of a flower, and the flower has this stalk, and then it has all these petals, and each of these petals are different aspects of your life. So it may be your personal life, your social life, your relationships, your money and financial status, your career, your spirituality, your fun and adventure, your lifestyle. So we have all of these different petals. Now, if you stand in the middle of this flower and you don't move at all, then frankly life would be a little bit boring, wouldn't it? I'm sure we're all agreed with that. And if we just start to shift, and we start to maybe look around a little bit, and maybe we turn our focus on to career at some point, and at other times we might turn our focus onto family or onto parenting, and there are other times in our life when we may turn our focus onto fun. So the idea of staying in the petal, but perhaps turning around, perhaps moving in a few directions towards those petals, in a way is perfect balance. However, what happens if you decide to go too far along one particular line, if you walk too far out onto the edge of one particular petal, what's going to happen? That flower that's on that stalk is going to start to bend, because you've put too much weight on one aspect of it. And then, of course, what happens is, when it carries on bending and bending and bending, because you keep pushing too far, eventually it's going to snap. And of course, what happens when a flower snaps? Well, we all know that. I get very disappointed with my flowers in my vase. I get so annoyed when I end up bending the stalk, because that's the end of it, right? We break the stalk and the water can't get in. Well, as human beings, when we break that stalk, what happens is we become ill, because we can't get energy up there, we can't get flow, we push ourselves just too far. So the idea of balance, like I said, is different for so many people, because it may just simply be turning your attention on one thing for a while, and then on another, and then on another. And for other people, it may be, no, I have a little bit of everything all day long, every day. I have some time for myself, I have some time with my family, I have some time for fun, I have some time for my career, and when I come back from work, then I'm able to switch off, and then I have this other life, and they're actually able to switch off. And it's interesting, so many of my clients that I work with, and I work, like I said, I work with a lot of professionals and a lot of dentists as well, actually, having being a dentist or periodontist myself. It's interesting, because that's one of the really big things, is being able to switch off when you get back from work. How on earth do you do it? How do you clear the clutter from your brain? And it was just today, actually, I was doing a personalized meditation call with a client of mine, and they were saying, what, I just want to be able to switch off. And it's like, okay, well, why is that important? Why do you want to be able to switch off? Well, I think, if I could just shut my mind down and maybe meditate for 10 minutes, then, I might be more effective, and I might be more productive, and I might get more out of my day. And we just had to keep on peeling off the layers, layer after layer after layer after layer, till I got him to a point of somewhere that was heart centered, where that was actually going to motivate him in order to implement that change every day. Because unless we repeat the same pattern of behavior for at least 30 days, it never becomes a habit. So I got him to a point of, actually, what's really important to me is connection with myself, connection with nature, connection with other people, connection with my family. And if I really focus on connection, then that's going to motivate me to then do the habit that I want to do, which in his case was shutting off his mind and spending some time doing that meditation. So that's just something else that I do. But how on earth can we switch off? How can we switch off when we come home from work and decide, I'm going to have some fun, or I'm gonna go and do some exercise and work out, or which, for me is fun, but most people call me mad for that respect, but I happen to love working out, and it's fun for me. Or I'm going to spend some time with my kids, or I'm going to spend some time with my partner, or with my family. So how do we do that? And also, how do we get to a point where no matter what is happening around us, we don't feel the stress? How can we get to a point where whatever's happening around us, we don't react? Now, there's a big difference between reacting and responding. When we react to something, it's an emotional response, and it happens very quickly. It's our instincts. As we become more conscious as beings, we get to a point where we can actually respond, which means we can just take a breath and decide how we choose to respond to something. Now, it happens in microseconds. It doesn't even be like, hang on, okay, I'm going to act this way, because it becomes so automatic, our ability to choose. So where am I going with this? Well, I've talked a little bit about work-life balance or work-life harmony and the relevance that has, and also the need to respond rather than react. So this ability and need to make a choice, and about finding a heart-centered form of emotion. But in order to be able to switch off when we come back from work and make a decision and not let everything around us stress us out, what we need to develop something which is the big B, and that word happens to be boundaries. Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. And it's all said and done. But you know what? Where do you get trained on boundaries? Where can you get training? Where can you get help on actually developing boundaries? And boundaries is one of those really tricky things that people say, yeah, I really should. Yeah, I really should. Yeah, I know I should. Yeah, I know I should do. I know I need to have boundaries. I know I should. And it's one of those habits, or one of those aspects of our lives, that so often we do want to do it, but we don't know exactly how to. How do you create boundaries, which is part of what my Breathe Method training does, as well as obviously then holding you accountable and ensuring that you actually do it. But why is creating boundaries important? Now, I'm sure you may well have situations where people nitpick at you. You might go into work and suddenly you've got 1,000,001 emails coming your way, and the phone is ringing, and you've got work colleagues asking you to do stuff, and then you're looking at your phone messages, and there's like so many WhatsApp messages. Goodness knows, at the moment it's like WhatsApp galore, isn't it? So many WhatsApp messages, and you feel the need to be able to reply to those and respond to those. And some clients have even said to me, I feel bad if I don't respond to a message straight away, because I think that person must think I'm being rude. It's not the case. That's obviously the story they are telling themselves in their head, and by telling themselves that, they feel a sense of guilt. Of course, if they feel a sense of guilt is a type of draining energy, so they're just going to feel bad about the situation. You could tell yourself a different story and say, oh, well, I'm not going to get to those WhatsApp messages right now, and no one's going to take offense about that, because they'll understand it's not that I'm not prioritizing them, it's just I have other things that I need to do at this point. And if you decide to think about it in that way, it actually becomes a far more powerful and empowering thought that doesn't make you feel guilty, because you rationalized it in your head, which is a certain level of energy. It's kind of the start of consciousness, if you like. So why is it important? Why is it important that we get to this stage where we don't have people nitpicking at us and where we're not feeling really stressed? Well, it's important because if we want to live this full, balanced, wonderful, amazing life, whatever that happens to look like for you, then we need to make choices, and it isn't as simple as just having a priority list. Okay, firstly, I'd ask you, where do you come on your priority list? Usually we end up putting ourselves right at the bottom and everything else first, which of course is the worst thing we can do, because it's a little bit like the aeroplane situation. You have to put the mask on yourself first to be able to be there for everybody else, and so often we're guilty of not doing that. That's a whole issue of self-care, which I'll get to in another video this week. But if I don't, for example, with work, if I don't shut down from work at a certain hour, my kids will be telling me all about their day at school. They will be asking me to do things. They will want to spend some time with me watching a film or playing a game, and my mind is going to be completely somewhere else. In which case, it's a no-win situation, let alone win-win, because I haven't enjoyed that fun quality time with my kids, which happens to be one of my passions and I try to focus on, but I'm not doing it, so I feel guilty. It's not going to do my work any good because my mind is on work, but at the same time I'm trying to focus on my kids, so actually my work suffers, so it's absolutely pointless. And then my health suffers, and I go to bed at the end of the day and I feel crap because I end up thinking, oh, what did I achieve? Oh, I should have. We're back to the should again. I should have been spending some time with my kids, and I should have been doing this, and I should have been doing that, and I didn't do it. So then I end up feeling quite rubbish. Do you see my point? I'm sure you do. So I would ask you a couple of questions. Where are your boundaries? Where are your cutoff points, and why do you have them? So if we take each aspect of our lives and think about boundaries, firstly, let's think about boundaries to do with work. That's the most obvious one, right? And how do you do it? Is it a case of you set office hours? I mean, particularly at the moment where so many people are still working from home, it's really difficult to set those boundaries. Your employer or your customers or your fellow colleagues, how many of them are emailing you, sending you messages, texting you, phoning you completely out of hours? Now, here's the thing. Sometimes, I do it. I send work emails out at midnight if I happen to be up and I happen to have been working at that particular time. But I make it very clear to whoever I'm sending them to, I'm just sending this out for me, because I need to get it done, because I need to draw a line and know that I've done it. What I don't then do is, so I make it clear to them, I'm not expecting them to reply, but how many of you get those emails and them, late at night or well past office hours and you still feel compelled to answer? The same with the WhatsApp messages, the text messages. You feel like, oh, actually I really should, or I should just take this phone call, I should just do this. And we reason it in our head to make us feel better, because as human beings, that's what we do. We want to feel better about things. So we'll rationalize it in our head and say, well, actually, if I do take this phone call, I'll feel better because it would just be done. I would have got it done and it won't be playing on my mind anymore. Or the same with an email. So I would challenge you at this point to say, well, actually, if you've set your hours and then you get that phone call, say from a colleague, and you see it ringing and you let it go through to voicemail and you make a conscious choice to think, it's out of office hours, I have something else to do that is equally, or if not more important. And again, this comes down to finding that heart-centered approach that you need, that's going to keep you in the habit. So we've got to drill down. So for me it was, okay, if I answer this phone, my kids are going to be looking at me miserable and I'm going to end up feeling guilty. And that is enough of a heart-centered emotion not to then go and answer the work email. So the first thing, when you set boundaries, when you set the boundary line, it's about deciding what you want it to be, decide what your office hours happen to be, and then find the heart-centered reason for why you want to stick to it. Why is it important to you? It's the biggest question you can ask yourself when you decide to do any kind of behavior change. Why? Why is it important to you? And to start with, you'll usually think of something that's in your head. We always do. We rationalize things. We are head-centered people. But if you keep asking yourself why and effectively peeling off layers, you will get to a heart-centered approach that will be enough to be able to engage you in keeping that behavior. So that's work, for example. Answering emails, answering phone calls. When do you switch off? Draw the line. What do we do when it's our parents? So I hear you say, look, this is all very well, but I've got elderly parents and they're ringing me and they have all these expectations of me and I have to drop everything and I have to go over there and I have to do their shopping for them and I have to do this and I have to do that. Well, again, it's about boundaries. And parents, admittedly, are a particularly tricky thing because parents remember us as we were as children, and we may well be very different people as adults, but we've decided not to let our parents actually see that aspect of ourselves, right? But again, it's about understanding if you were going to refuse them, if you were going to draw a line because there's something else you need to do or want to do, then find yourself a heart-centered reason for it. And then it comes down to how do you communicate those boundaries. So of course, if my dad just said, Rana, I want you to do this, and he doesn't know how stressed out I am and how my to-do list has already got 50 things on it, and if I take on the 51st thing I'm just going to go mental and crazy. He doesn't know that. But so I could just scream at him because at this point I feel so stressed. It's like, no, I can't do it, I can't take it. Or it's how I communicate. So I could communicate with him saying, listen, I hear that you would really like me to do this, and from your point of view, you feel it's really urgent, and I can understand and I appreciate the importance of it. But please understand from my point of view, if I take one more thing on right now, my health will suffer. Or my kids need this, or whatever the thing happens to be. So in other words, communicate your needs to them. So make it clear that you hear what they're saying, you validate the importance of what it is they are requesting, but then you also express your needs in the process. So that is really, really important. And we can use that method of communication with our partners, our spouse, also with our friends. I mean, how many friends do we have that trounce all over our boundaries? How many people do you know where you are the giver, where you are the doer, where you are the one that takes everything on your shoulders? I certainly was. But what happens when we keep on giving and giving and giving, and we don't refill the tank? Is eventually the tank gets empty, we get drained, and then what happens? We get ill again. So even our friends, and I would even challenge you a little bit further here and decide, if those friends don't understand, do you really want them to remain friends? Are they really friends worth having? I've got quite a few of you watching, so I'd love it if you just write a comment or give me a thumbs up if that point resonates with you at all, because sometimes it's a bit like belongings and material things. We think we need these things. We think we need these things to make us happy. I need to have this house, and I need to have this desk, and I need to have this piece of furniture, and I need to have this computer and this phone, etc., etc. You know what? We do the same thing on an emotional level. We do the same thing with friends as well. So if someone is really trouncing all over your boundaries, and you notice that you only ever get that phone call from them once in a blue moon, and it's when they want something from you, and yet they never phone you to check in how you are at any other time, then I would challenge you to consider how much of a friend is that person. And it's a tough question. It's a tough question, and it's a tough thing to consider. I'm not suggesting it's easy, and it's part of what I do in the coaching process. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. I just wanted to give you some tips and some ideas about choice, about conscious choice, about setting boundaries, about the importance of them, the relevance of them, and a few little tips about how to do it. And like I said, I have this whole systematic method which is fast, effective, and tailor-made to each person, of which that is part of what I teach and train and coach on, is about setting the boundaries and getting that effective communication so that you get the best out of your family members, your peers, your team, your employees, literally everybody around you. So those are just two of the things in the breathe method, and I will be back again at this time tomorrow to tell you more about it, which includes things like manifestation training, leadership, time management, productivity, and all kinds of other things, and most importantly, fun. Let's not forget that. Thank you for listening. If you've got any comments, then please do put them in the comments box. And if you want to know more about this breathe method and how to be able to implement those boundaries and communication, I will put a link to a video training that explains it all in more detail for you, and also how you can get on the phone and have a chat with me about it as well, if you so wish. Have a brilliant evening. Bye.